This podcast is intended for informational purposes only and does not constitute advice. The scenarios and outcomes discussed are illustrative in nature and are not guaranteed. Actual benefits may vary.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff.
You're listening to Working Forward, presented by Symetra. In this limited podcast series, hosted by Todd Zen, we explore the future of work from a variety of viewpoints and discuss the challenges and opportunities ahead.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Working Forward podcast. My name is Todd Zen and I am your host. And we are thrilled you've joined us today for what I think is going to be a very compelling episode where we're going to be talking about technology. We've talked about technology a lot during this series, and what we're going to be focusing specifically on today is how do we use technology to create valuable and excellent customer experiences. So I think we all can acknowledge that in the employee benefit space, there are many game-changing technologies in place and a lot of innovation happening. So we're going to cover just a few of the biggest ones today. We're going to talk a bit about medical claims integration that is having a transformative impact on the supplemental health space. And we're also going to talk quite a bit about benefit administration platforms and integration and how these integrated experiences are driving really valuable outcomes for employers who are managing increasingly complex benefit programs and increasingly diverse employee populations. So with that, let me bring on two fantastic guests that are here to join us to talk about this topic. The first is joining us from Ansell. Her name is Christine Latour, and she is Ansell's VP of Insurance. Christine, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Todd. I'm really happy to be here with you today.
Awesome. Likewise, great to have you. So we also have someone from inside the Symetra walls, Ravi Agadi. He is joining us, and he is our VP of Platform Partnerships here at Symetra. Ravi, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Todd. I've been really looking forward to joining you on a podcast, so appreciate the invite.
It is lovely to have you, my friend. So let's jump right in. I want to start with you, Christine, and I'd love it if you could share with our audience a little bit about Ansell, what you do, the product you sell. There is a Symetra tie here as well. So, but I think I'll explain that maybe after you give our audience just a high-level background on the product you sell and a little bit more about how it works.
Yeah, thanks. I'd love to. So I think as individuals, we're all very familiar with healthcare costs and how expensive healthcare can be today. In fact, this morning, I was just reading a Milliman release that talked about that for the average American already in 2025, healthcare costs have gone up almost 7%. I think the exact was 6.7%. So many people are just unprepared for these types of costs that come their way on a daily basis. So the idea behind Ansell is an innovative supplemental health product that covers a broad range of medical conditions or diagnoses that provide a benefit for these types of incidents so that individuals have kind of coverage in a place that they might not have otherwise had it. And when I say innovative, I mean very simple product design. Benefits eligibility is based solely on the medical diagnosis or ICD-10 code. Claims process is very simple. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes, I know. And then sophisticated technology. So the administration for the employer is very simple, and the member has all the information that they need at their fingertips.
Well, that's fantastic. And longtime listeners may recognize that a lot of what Christine described should remind you a lot of how Symetra talks about our supplemental health products. And I think there's good reason for that. Symetra is also very fortunate to be partners with Ansell, where we are distributing a version of their offering. We call it Symetra Health. Ansell is currently distributing a similar version of this offering direct to employers as well. So when Christine talks about a lot of the great things that Ansell does, or all of them really, they're also a part of our Symetra Health products. So that's why it's so great to have Christine here talking about these things and just driving some awareness of what I think is some really, really fantastic things and really great for consumers. So thank you for that. So Ravi, let me bring you into the conversation here, and I'm wondering if you could also provide a bit of a high-level overview or outline of platform integrations, benefit administration partners. That's a big topic. Maybe that's not a general outline, but you're doing very important work at Symetra. We know that Ben admin systems are central to how our employer clients manage their business, manage their benefits. There are increasing pressures around how those platforms integrate with various different insurance carriers, other type of experiences, payroll. This is a very, very complicated thing. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about, kind of these platform integrations, why they're so important, and what your role is here at Symetra trying to make those connections.
Yes, absolutely, Todd. Different HR platforms, Ben admin platforms are at the core of the employee benefits market because most employers are using an HR platform and or a Ben admin and or even a payroll platform to be able to not only offer their benefits, but to be able to also, do the premium deductions that they need done during payroll. So what they're primarily looking for is what can we provide as a carrier that will help them provide ease of building and administering each carrier's products on these platforms. So the integrations that have become real table stakes now are EOI integrations that makes it easier to submit an application and very easily get the decision back into these platforms. A plan API, which makes it easy to build the products. 90% of the work is done through the technology, and then HR just has to go in and make a few manual adjustments if needed. Enrollment APIs, which help with eligibility and billing automation. Those are two areas that really help employers. And then the other thing that very much helps employees is making it easy to educate them on all of the different products that are being offered during open enrollment. So all these together are pretty much what I would call as table stakes in some of these integrations that need to be made available.
Thanks, Ravi. That makes a lot of sense. So quick follow-up question. API, acronym that we all hear all the time. I'm wondering if you could tell us what that means. I made up my own thing. I thought it was automated processing interface, but you've explained to me that's wrong. So can you tell our audience what that acronym means?
Yeah, it's really like an application programming interface. It's all about being able to share data through an interface where the one platform that's communicating with another platform is able to share data in a much more seamless way, where they're both communicating in what we call as the term API is used for the most part to try to reflect real-time updates. It doesn't have to be real time, but it's where you're able to take any simple change that happens on a single record and be able to share it with the other platform at the same exact moment that it happens. So that's how your APIs help you keep the data in sync across different systems or platforms.
That's great. That's very helpful. And if you've been in this business for a while, you'll know what a massive leap forward it is. I've been doing this long enough to know that there was a time when this information was passed forth with Excel files that maybe were emailed back and forth, right? So this idea of automatic uploading and real time or close to real time is just a huge step forward. So you can really see why it's so important. So looking forward to digging in further into that as we talk. But Christine, let me bring you back. I want to talk more about the Ansel product, and I want to talk specifically about customer experience, claims experience, and everything around that. The Ansel product is so innovative. You kind of pulled back from the innovative word earlier, but I'm going to go for it. I think it is very, very innovative, and it's very, very broad. It covers a lot of things. It helps people with very real challenges that they face around medical expenses, but none of that would work very well unless you made it very, very easy for people to file a claim, to get the proceeds, access their benefits. And you've really built what I think is some striking web-based technology, whether it's online or via an app, that really makes that process very simple for people. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, how you handle claim processing, how you use these web tools to drive these great experiences.
Yeah, happy to. And I definitely did not mean to pull away from the word innovative. So if it sounded like I was, no, I truly do believe our product is innovative, especially in the sense of how simple it is, right? Like that was one of our key drivers with the product, to just make it as simple as possible so that everyone understood what the benefits were and how you could be eligible for a benefit through the product offering. And when I was talking about Ansel earlier, I did also talk a little bit about the sophisticated technology, and a big part of that for the individual member is the online member portal, as well as the mobile app that we offer. Not only does it house all of the documents that an employee might need to understand what their coverage is or how their plan works, but it is also the place where the majority of our insureds file their claims. And they can do it either via this online member portal or via the mobile app that they can download onto their phone. And either way, it is a paperless claim submission. It is 4 questions. So, we talk about the entire claim submission process taking, under 4 minutes, because it is only 4 questions to answer. And we do need the documentation of what the medical condition is that the person is filing a claim for, but we need simply the information about the diagnosis, the ICD-10 code, and that information is generally in the standard paperwork that an individual would get as they're leaving their doctor's office or as they're leaving a hospital or other treatment provider. So it's very simple documentation that we ask for. The member can upload that information directly to the portal or through the app. And that's what we utilize to make the claim decision. Generally, our claim decisions are made under 72 hours. And we're very proud of that turnaround time for the industry and for these types of products. And benefit payments are made to Venmo, they're made to PayPal. If the individual chooses one of those options, we have direct deposit and we have the traditional paper check. So all in all, I try to just really drive home the simplicity of the overall process for the member.
Thank you. That's great. I think, one of the knocks on supplemental health coverage over the years has been that it hasn't always been a very frictionless experience. The idea of filing a claim, having the information you need. And I think Ansel's done a fantastic job of removing that friction and creating that great customer experience. And we're going to talk in a minute about how we can go even further than that and actually even further automate it, which is really exciting. So we'll come back to that in just one moment. But Ravi, I want to ask you a question about your space before we dig into that further. So you mentioned the importance of these platform integration, the degree to which they're table stakes, which certainly I completely agree with. Can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing in the market, what type of technology partners, what type of integration? You mentioned some of the APIs, but just, elaborate a little bit on why this stuff is so important in the benefit space and what are some of the most exciting technologies you're seeing driving it?
Yeah, absolutely, Todd. Yeah, as I mentioned previously, there's HR and Ben admin platforms are being widely used by employers. Today, there's over 100+ platforms, but there's a higher priority on the platforms that offer all what we call as HRIS sort of services, like a Workday, ADP, UKG. The list just goes on. And those platforms, the integrations that everybody is looking for is absence management. How can we make absence management easier? Be it, how you manage total leaves, how do you provide status on claims? So looking for integrations related to that. AI leverage capabilities. That's API used to be the big buzzword in the last 5-7 years. AI has become the new buzzword in the last 2 years. And so we see that as one of the big big waves, how people can use AI to really drive operational efficiency. And then along with that, text messaging, chatbots, things that make it easier for self-servicing and really more of being able to provide service on an as-needed basis.
Excellent. No, that's great. And you mentioned absence management. I as a product leader in the benefit space, I can really emphasize how complicated that space is. There's there's federal FMLA, there's state leaves, there's local leaves, municipal leaves, there's paid family medical leaves by state. As an employer, this stuff is impossible to manage. And then there's the nuts and bolts of just the individual leaves and when people are out and when they're coming back. So this truly is very, very exciting stuff for employers, and we're excited at Symetra to offer these integrations and support it. So I'm going to leave that for just one moment. I want to dig back into something that I referenced a little earlier, and that is this idea of a frictionless claims experience. And I want to talk to Christine a little bit about something I mentioned during the intro, and that's medical claims integration. So that is really one of the key innovations that's happening in supplemental health right now. And I happen to believe that the Ansel product, and ergo the Symetra Health product, is very well positioned to get the most value out of this concept of medical claims integration. So Christine, maybe you could just give us a quick overview. How does medical claims integration work from a broad perspective? How does Ansel use it? And then we can talk a little bit about the benefits.
Yeah, happy to. So medical claims integration is where we are getting the data that we need to adjudicate claims directly from the medical carrier or their TPA. And what this does is allows us to pay benefits, pay all eligible claims without the member having to submit a claim at all. So it is when you mentioned the word frictionless, which might be the perfect way to describe it for the individual member. So our platform accepts the claims file and reviews all the information and says these are the X number of claims that are payable based on the medical condition or the ICD-10 code that was received as part of that file, and then benefits are paid out to all eligible claims. So again, a very simple way for us to pay as many claims as possible for a given group without anyone having to file any individual claims on their own.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So am I correct in saying the obvious advantage to the employee, to the insured, is just the delight of receiving a claim payment without ever even submitting a claim? Is there any other elements to that employee insured experience that benefits from medical claims utilization?
Yeah, I think that's the obvious one, and that's the key one, right? That there's no individual claim submission required. But I think take a step back and all right, what else does that tell you? So it tells you that the individual member who has the insurance doesn't necessarily need to understand all of the details of the coverage or all of the guidelines around how a claim submission works, because they don't have to do it. It's taken care of for them. So there's a little maybe less stress on their end about worrying about whether or not they had an eligible claim, because they know it's going to be taken care of no matter what.
Yeah, that's really exciting stuff. And just to build on what you said, the idea that if you go access medical care, you're probably not going to see a bill for 30 days or so. And as you highlighted earlier, whether it's by them filing directly and getting payment in 72 hours or via seamless processing like this medical claims integration, they could have the proceeds from the Ansel policy before they ever even see a bill, right? I mean, how fantastic is that when you hear about how people cannot afford this stuff. They can't even put it on their credit card. So, what a wonderful thing. And I'm going to give one other plug for this too, that I thought of while you were talking. There is a real issue and challenge in supplemental health with people signing up for this. We know in employee benefits, you sign up in the fall for the subsequent year. And a lot of times people forget. They forget they have benefits. So that has led to some lower utilization in the past, and people not getting the benefits they deserve and that they are entitled to. So with medical claims integration, you don't even need to remember you bought it. This is something that's going to be so seamlessly integrated for you. I just think that's really compelling.
Yeah, I agree. And just to elaborate on that a little bit more, two things I want to mention. One is, so we get calls all the time from members who say, wait, what is this check? And so maybe they're caught a little bit off guard by the benefit because they either forgot they had the insurance or forgot there was this seamless process behind the scenes. But what greater conversation is there for us to have with a member other than, well, you receive this benefit because you have this coverage and we want to support you during this, difficult time for you. So those are always great conversations that we look forward to having with individuals. And I think to your point on the utilization, that is the other thing that claims integration really helps us with, not only at the employee level, but for the employer also who's potentially sponsored the coverage for their employees. They see the value of the benefit day in and day out because we're able to pay as many claims as possible through this process, where again, if individuals have to remember to file a claim, they're not sure what the process is, they don't think they've been eligible, they're not going to necessarily see the value as much as they do day in, day out through this process.
Well, that's great. And actually, it segues into my next question. Why do employers care, right? Especially in some cases, I know with Ansel, employers pay a percentage of premium. So I think it's obvious that they would care that the plan's being utilized. But in some cases, it's what we would call fully voluntary, which means the individual pays for all of it. But I think even still, the employer cares about these outcomes. But what has your experience been? What's that benefit to the employer?
Yeah, I think there's a couple different ways that they care. One is obviously wanting to make sure that they're providing the benefits, the products and services to their employees that bring the most value to their employees on no matter what the demographic of their workforce is. We all read the articles about one of the top ways to attract and retain talent is through your benefits package. So especially through claims integration, if they can see the utilization, they can react to it. They can understand whether or not the product they have, whatever the product is, they can see whether or not the product is doing what they need it to do for their workforce. So I think that's one of the key benefits for them. Additionally, just in terms of freeing up their time to focus on other things with claims integration, they're not every day answering questions about how do I file a claim? Can you check on the status of my claim? I submitted a couple weeks ago. I haven't heard anything back. So there's less of that because the process has become so much more automated. So I think administratively, their time gets freed up a little bit as well. So I think those are a couple of the main ways that it really does benefit employers.
That makes a lot of sense. So final question on this. I know you've been doing this for a while, and I know Ansel's done a lot of great studies, and you're very good at customer experience studies, case studies, measuring impact. So anything that you'd be able to share with our audience around, obviously de-identified, but just maybe a quick high level, for instance, or case study of medical claims integration in action?
Yeah, there's two that I want to share. So one is for a very large client, over 6,000 covered members. They have had claims integration since day one. In their first 12 months of coverage, they saw 27% utilization on the plan through claims integration. So I think we can agree that that's a very good result for a supplemental health product. The other one, and it's a little bit different, this is a group that did not have claims integration when they first elected coverage with Ansel. About a year in, they decided to add it. We had a conversation with them. We explained to them the benefits, and they thought it would make some sense for them to add it as a group. Since they've added it, their monthly claims activity has on average doubled and in some months tripled, not only in terms of the number of claim submissions that we've seen, but also in terms of the benefit payments that have gone out the door. So, again, just a couple of quick examples of where we've seen this truly have a lot of impact for our clients.
Wow, those are staggering and very favorable statistics. So thank you for sharing. So I'm going to pivot back to Ravi. I want to bring our big topic now back to the platform integration space. So we've teed this up in the previous questions, but just in a very, very broad sense, Ravi, these technologies have to increase employers' ability to manage their benefits overall. But can you talk a little bit about how they're leveraging this technology and what are some of those positive impacts that the employer see, the HR department sees?
Employers, want to leverage the technology for their own operational efficiency. A lot of employers' HR teams in the last 5 years have become leaner, and these technologies help these teams be able to stay lean, right? So that's what's important to the employers. How can we make their lives better, right? Whereas what they're also looking at the same time is how do we make the employee experience very positive during open enrollment, during the time of claim submission? How do you make it easier for for employees to be able to avail the benefits that they're signing up for. So some simple examples are, making it easy to do the EOI application where the employer doesn't have to do a whole lot. We build a single sign-on that allows the application to be triggered right during the enrollment cycle and letting the employee complete it. If an employee doesn't remember or hasn't fully submitted it, having the carrier's technology be able to send out automated notifications so the employer's HR team doesn't have to run a report on a daily or a weekly basis to see who signed up for a product that triggered EOI but did not actually submit their application. Whereas, we have technology that can very easily notify those employees to come back in and complete their application. Needing to provide claims eligibility details at the time when a new claim comes in, it would be great if we can just pull that eligibility right off the HR platform or a Ben admin platform without an employer having to, answer that information. Education that I touched on previously, being able to offer it not only during open enrollment, but when there's a new hire who comes on board, being able to provide these tools so they can run through these tools themselves makes it a lot easier that they can do it on their own free time. And obviously, everything around claim integration that Christine just, went through, that's becoming, also a great way to make it easier for employees to be able to use the benefits that they've signed up for.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Robbie. I appreciate that a lot. I think, unless you're in this business and intimately familiar with it, I don't think you understand how many transactions need to take place across
Yeah.
all of this, right? The eligibility, the EOI is a great example. That is that can be a very challenging thing. If I'm going through open enrollment and I say I want $200,000 of coverage, and then then in order to qualify, I need to go back and get asked questions about whether I qualify. And then let's say I don't qualify, but if that process takes too long, then what if I'm being charged the wrong premium? All of this stuff creates this massive billing challenges, misallocations. And, so the fact that technology is stepping up and filling this void, and again, that real time thing, that's a game changer. That takes away a lot of the challenge of
Yeah.
what I just mentioned. And that's just one example. There's probably at least a dozen more. So that's really exciting stuff. But let's briefly talk about the other side of the coin. I know that these platforms, these Ben admin systems, HRIS systems, they're called a lot of different things based on exactly what they do, but they offer a lot, but that doesn't necessarily mean that standing one up or implementing one is easy. A lot of times it's a lot of work. I know it's a lot of work to change. We've talked with employer clients that were in the midst of a migration or a change from one platform to another. But can you talk a little bit more about some of the challenges that you're aware of that employers face? And is there anything we can do as carriers to help make any of that
Yeah.
easier?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, you know, some of the challenges that they're facing, first of all, is if they've been doing a certain process for a long time, it's their willingness to be able to change. We all go through that, even in our day-to-day jobs, right? Like if we've been doing something a particular way and now there's a new way to do it, it takes us time to adapt to that. I know every time we do a iPhone upgrade, we all go through that pain, right? So it's the same kind of concept. Um, their willingness to use a different business process. And there might be times where they have to provide access to things that they haven't had to do in the past, but providing the access to external parties might be able to help them enable new technology, right? And I'll give you an example. Um, Talked about this with our absence management team all the time. If they're a first-time outsourcer of absence management versus a first-time user of an API, those are two completely different things. Like we might have to take them through stages, and as a carrier, it's upon us to be able to educate to employers upfront about what sort of changes that they're going to see. when we get into it, like a claim status API, one of the things we have seen is employers have to be willing to let go of the fact that the API is doing all their updates for them. They don't have to do the manual update. But guess what? If they go in and do a manual update after an API has updated it, the next time there's a change to that employee record in our system, our API overrides their manual steps. Right? That's how an API is typically designed. So them just needing to learn these things upfront and be prepared to let go is part of the education that has to be done upfront before they actually start using it. So I think, all of the sort of customer onboarding guides, it's really important to set aside some time upfront to make sure employers, HR teams are understanding how this technology has to be used. None of it is overly complicated, but it's just making sure that they realize it upfront rather than just turn on the button and then expect everybody to know how it actually works. So that upfront education is important.
Well, that's great. Yeah, I think that is really helpful for making sure employers know what they're getting into, but then making sure they're getting the most value out of their investment. And this
Yeah.
truly is an investment. These HRIS systems and various systems are a big investment by employers. So very important that they get the full value from them. So I'd like to wrap us up with one final question for both of you. This is the Working Forward podcast. So I always like to pester our guests with questions about trying to figure out the future, and I anticipate the future. I've known you both for a long time, so hopefully you won't be too mad at me asking you to speculate on this. But maybe I'll tee it up this way. I think this discussion has been a really great example of technology that is very focused on delivering positive outcomes. So everything we've talked about with Ansel, with the claims process, the medical claims integration, this is getting money into people's hands that they need to help them with very real challenges they face. Everything we've talked about with platform integrations and the streamlining of these various things, the accuracy, this is helping employers run their benefit programs. It's helping HR departments. I think all of this is technology applied very, very well. But what I want to ask you both is, I think that I've personally seen technology be a bit of a double-edged sword around customer outcomes. So for every one of these great examples we've talked about today, there's been a chatbot that pops up when you're trying to get a simple question answered, and the chatbot has no idea what you're talking about. And there's no question it's technology, right? It's very innovative, but it's delivering a really lousy outcome, which is just frustration and annoyance, right? So as you're thinking about the future of technology, Ravi, for you, it's platforms, it's integration, it's HR tech. Christine, for you, it's, I think, very much about customer experience, member experience. How are you making sure that as these things evolve, as we keep developing new technologies, we're focusing on the customer, we're focusing on customer outcomes? And Ravi, maybe I'll ask you first.
Yeah, I think you've said all the words in there. It's hard because really the goal is you don't just go building an API or just leverage AI. You have to think about what that outcome needs to be, what the customer experience needs to be, and then design whatever you want to build to meet those experiences. So we have to always start with that end goal of what that outcome has to be. And that's the way, we've been doing it at Symetra, because it's important for us to first make sure that what we build is going to provide that great customer experience. So we understand the experience. As you know, Todd, we've done surveys to understand what experience makes the most sense, and then we go back and really build what we want. And I
That's
think we
great.
have to continue doing that.
No, I completely agree. So, Christine, probably tough for Ansel to keep topping themselves. But what do you think? As technology evolves, how do you keep the customer at the center of that?
Yeah, so it's funny, as I was preparing for this answer, I started to wrote down what I think. And then in all honesty, I phoned a friend, meaning an internal subject matter expert who actually focuses on technology all day, to say, give me what are you hearing from your network too? And her response was similar to where I was headed. So I'll kind of give you both of our responses kind of combined there. So from my experience, and I've worked across a number of product lines in my career, as both of you have as well. There's no end to the need for consumer education about what insurance is, what your plans cover, how to use it. And that's not new, right? We've been hearing this forever. Like, how do you best communicate with employees? How do you make sure they understand what their options are during enrollment? And you think about all the different insurances that individuals have to keep straight in their heads, from their health insurance to all the ancillary products to their car insurance, their home insurance. So it's definitely a challenging scenario that I don't think anyone has fully figured out, and will probably continue to be a struggle for us in the industry going forward. But in my mind, that has to be a big place where we focus. And I think we touched on that a little bit in some of the earlier answers, just about how do we make communication simple? How do we educate through the technology? How do we ensure that people understand what it is they're purchasing, and then how to use the product? So that was kind of, where I'd like to see this go, and how we keep our customers at the forefront.
Couldn't agree more. I think those are both fantastic answers, and thank you both for sharing your thoughts on that and really all of this. It's been a pleasure talking with you about this topic. I'm actually a little excited, to think about all the things that we can accomplish with putting that customer first, right? As you both said, the customer is the North Star. The technology exists to serve them and their needs, not the other way around, right? And I think both of you represent areas that are doing really, really powerful things for people. And so it was really just wonderful to have you on the podcast. Thank you both for joining. I want to thank the audience as well. We hope you have subscribed. If you haven't already, please do. And with that, we're going to sign off, but we will be back speaking with you soon with another episode. Thanks very much.
You're listening to Working Forward, Future of Work podcast series. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Symetra Life Insurance Company or its affiliates.